assaulted don't want to go to trial, just because you have the private kind of humiliation, and then you have to go out in public, and there are witnesses, and there are going to be people who are trying to intimidate you, and there are going to be people who are lying about you and saying the stuff Dershowitz was saying about how you're a prostitute and you actually, it's your fault, all the victim blaming. Right. And it's like...
So, all right, man. Now going down to the the victims, the women. We've referenced Virginia Giuffre a couple times. She met Epstein through Trump in 2000 when she was 16, working at a spa at Mar-a-Lago. She's recruited by Ghislaine to be a nurse. Like, Ghislaine comes up to her. If anyone wants to know the actual stories, you can once again read Virginia Giuffre's book, Nobody's Girl, which is just her story is just so tragic, man. It's really interesting because Virginia Giuffre, just from her perspective, she claims that Trump had nothing to do with any of the illicit activity, which is very interesting. Like, Trump always treated her with respect. A lot of things, though, Trump he felt like Epstein would recruit people away from his, from Mar-a-Lago and take him to, his own whatever properties he wanted to do. In 2014, through a court filing, Virginia Giuffre claims Dershowitz once again assaulted her when she was 16 over several of the Epstein properties. She also alleged that there was a prime minister that assaulted her, and Prince Andrew, of course. Alan Dershowitz countersues in response, and one of Alan Dershowitz, just going back to this lovely man of God right here, was saying he did get massages, but he kept his underwear on when he got a massage. Here we go. Here's Dershowitz.
Dershowitz is a longtime friend of Epstein's who represented him in the criminal underage sex case.
I never saw a young underage woman.
Yet Epstein's former butler swore under oath that Dershowitz was at Epstein's residences.
Yeah.
At the same time, underage girls were there.
Were there young women in another part of the house giving massages when I wasn't around? I have no idea of that.
Dershowitz did say he once received a massage at Epstein's mansion, but from an adult woman.
I kept my underwear on during the massage. I don't like massages particularly.
Bob Norman, Local 10.
Come on, dude.
Yeah.
Even if you're not, so maybe, I don't know, maybe it's possible that Dershowitz didn't do this stuff, but it's like, I guess when you're part of the DOJ, part of the FBI, part of these people that are investigating, you have to be super objective and you have to take your emotions out of it. That's one thing when really covering all this stuff, I was like, I have to really not be emotional about this. I'm not really doing a good job now that we're live on air. But it's just like, why would we give people the benefit of the doubt? And this is like, I had this written down later on when we're talking about these other victims, dude. But it's like, when are we going to believe victims?
Right, especially since we know...
I'm sorry to laugh. It's just like...
Yeah. We have so many testimonies, and like I was saying earlier, so many things have been confirmed from just future developments and future releases that kind of suggest that they aren't just making this up. There's obviously new and we're there. So, I don't know. It's just Alan Dershowitz has enough influence that he can show up on the news whenever he wants to give his own side of the story. He's on Fox News all the time. It's like, why? Why do you let this guy...
Fox News, man.
Yeah, it's Fox News, but even for them, that's low.
I know, right? That was good, Dan. That was funny. So at 17, she's trafficked to Prince Andrew, right? Once again, we talked about Zorro Ranch. Part of the blackmail for her about being trafficked to Prince Andrew is in Virginia Giuffre herself has said that Ghislaine told her, "We know where your school is."
Yeah, that's just disturbing.
In the memoir, Virginia Giuffre revealed that she was abused by her father beforehand. And she actually brought this up to Ghislaine, when Ghislaine first ran into her and was like, "Hey, I know you're reading a massage book. Would you ever be interested in Jeffrey?" And then she brings up the whole philanthropist. How I was like, "Oh, well, he'll come if you, give him massages, he'll help you with your schooling and whatever." And it was, man, it was just heartbreaking in the Surviving Jeffrey Epstein series. Virginia Giuffre talked about like the survival part of her brain that would turn on, and I know I'm not doing it justice because I've just never experienced anything close to that. But she was talking about having the survival part of her brain that would turn on when the abuse would happen, because in her mind at the time, it was the lesser of two evils, her getting abused, because there was a promise of her getting education. And it's just heartbreaking. It's just, it's hard to describe the sorrow and stuff. And this is when you're reading the shit like on a Tuesday night after work. You're like, God dang it, man. Like, holy cow.
Yeah, and that's just a continuation of the whole thing of picking on the most vulnerable people. It's awful, but it's on purpose because
exactly
they're going to be the easiest to manipulate.
Absolutely, man. You know, and so at 19, Epstein and Ghislaine heavily suggested that Virginia birth their child, actually. And they were going to give her $200K a month. And this tracks with the eugenic stuff that was happening at Zorro Ranch, you know. Virginia eventually escaped because it was getting so bad with she was starting to like fight with Ghislaine and Epstein, and so Ghislaine's like, I'll do you a compromise. I'll have you go to Thailand so you can learn, because she never got her license like Virginia Giuffre, like she was just being trafficked. And Ghislaine said, fine, we're going to have you go do it. You're going to go to Thailand and you're going to bring a Thai girl back home to Jeffrey. And once she got to Thailand, she, basically fled to Australia and said, I'm not coming back. And then, I forgot, like Jeffrey Epstein sent this like weird like text to her in response, but so interesting, and then we go down to the farmers. We know a lot of the farmer story more through like the Jeffrey Epstein Filthy Rich through the Netflix documentary. This is once again where they a big part of this, like this, and they were part of they started once again in Florida as well, so they experienced all this stuff going through. Hey, like Jeff wants to $200 for a massage. And then they would go, and then they would get, and it's this whole like, I wish I could do it, but I'm not a psychologist, but it's the psychological like weight that he had like as an older man like over these young women, so they would like keep coming back in a way, and like, hey, recruit some of your other friends, and we'll pay you more, and
he had Ghislaine, who we're going to talk about more in part 2, but she also kind of had the role of being a comforting figure. You kind of already touched on it with Guffrey, who talked
right,
who Ghislaine kind of put her at ease, kind of encouraged her, like, oh no, you can meet this guy, he's chill, we're both women, we can, I understand what's happened to you, and she kind of had like a protective role, or at least she put on that facade at first,
absolutely,
even though she was as depraved as Jeffrey, but we'll get into that.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And once again, Ghislaine was a woman, so like she came as very, Ghislaine was like, very charming, super like big socialite, like a very sexy, fun-loving person. Like, we'll learn these accounts from other people, but it was well documented that that's how she was.
And you were showing the abuse statistics before, and one of them was that 93% of all abusers are men. So that's good to keep in mind, but also I think she went under the radar a lot because of that.
Absolutely. And once again, with the farmers, like they originally report these abuses in 96. Then they, FBI and like, in the, the police reject, they say whatever, like they basically just tell them to F off essentially. Then they both talked to reporters in 2002, but it went nowhere. Then they talked to the FBI again in 2006, once again when March 2005 it starts to get the ball rolling. And grooming was a very big part of their story. Once again, they were involved from 94 to 97. So once again, people think like it really. So they were actually even before Virginia Giuffre. Now that you look at the timelines, and so an incredible part of the farmer story is that they were talking about it for so long, and they were really able to, once again, just somehow find the strength each year, each month, each week, each day to just, to start to, yeah, it's just, I don't know how you have the strength to do that. I think about my own mental hurdles sometimes. And then when it comes to sexual abuse, like, it's just insane. And once again, these two farmer girls, like, they were promised careers and they were promised, all these things, and they just got easily fell into his web, because it's like, dude, you're 16, like, you don't even really have a brain about you till like 22, 23, 24, 25. Like,
Yeah.
there's no, and that's the thing, like, people would mention, well, why couldn't they run away? Why couldn't they do this? They couldn't. They're kids, dude. What are you talking about?
Yeah. It's economic pressure, it's social pressure, all sorts of stuff. Epstein was a master manipulator.
Yeah.
He was like manipulating people on Wall Street. So
Yeah.
what chance do you have if you're a 16-year-old?
Great point, man. Great point. There was Sarah Ranscom. She was, recruited at the age of 22 because she moved to New York in 2006. She's once again promised financial help because she had interest in the Fashion Institute of Technology, which was an elite design school. She went to Epstein's Island on a false narrative of a girl's vacation, and her abuse went on for 9 months, where every day she was getting attacked.
Yeah.
For lack of a better word. She was viciously threatened into silence. I thought this was heartbreaking. This is her reaction towards Ghislaine, Dan. I think you'll find this.
I wasn't worth anything. And I'm sad that she'll never see the beach or the sea again.
This is Sarah Ranscom talking about Ghislaine.
And it's something I'll never be able to understand. I'm sorry.
So we don't have to go through the whole video. If it's just it's a lot, like, emotionally heavy, but she was speaking actually about how Ghislaine's never going to be able to see, like, the beach again or all these other things, which almost goes to show, like, I think with this woman, Sarah Ranscom, like, part of her story as well was that she brought up big names that weren't at the time involved, like this billionaire who we met, Richard Branson, Clinton. There was someone else, I forgot. I had it written down. But it's weird that, like, why would Sarah Ranscom, like, why would she be, like, almost empathetic towards Ghislaine? I think because, like, where Sarah Ranscom now is at the place where it's like there was so much destruction and vicious.
Yeah, it might have just
I'm
been,
running out of words, bro.
it's like a Stockholm syndrome kind of thing, maybe, where, like, she probably was in contact with so many awful people that even though Ghislaine Maxwell was holding her against her will, she was just nice enough to her that she developed, like, oh, this person is making me feel safe or whatever, even if she's manipulating her. And
Right.
even understanding that, the emotional impact of that kind of sticks with you.
Yeah, and once again, like, Sarah Ranscom, like, she did mention once again Prince Andrew, Richard Branson, and Clinton. She actually was never trafficked to any of those people, but it was interesting because they were still like heavily involved. At least Clinton and Prince Andrew, and this girl Sarah Ranscom was one of the first people that got the ball rolling about how Ghislaine's the chief orchestrator, how she's the engineer of it all, like how there are hundreds of girls, Once again, there's other stories about this girl, Liz Steiner. She meets Ghislaine at a department store, offers to carry her bags because she's this lovely British, like, woman, like, that's very, like, has a lot of, like, what's the word? Pose to her, Then there was Courtney Wild, Jennifer Arrows, and Marina Lacerda. And especially for Courtney Wild, we mentioned her a couple times. But basically, she was recruited at 14. And at the time, like, Dershowitz and other attorneys come after her, claiming that she was a prostitute when she makes these claims, Dershowitz is like, hey, check her MySpace page. She dresses like a hoe. And, even the feds actually showed up on her door one day. they even actually showed up at her job. They were very aggressive when questioning her. At one point, like, she came home and the FBI had dropped a folder of all the victim reports of the girls Courtney Wild knew, meaning that Courtney Wild was one of the kids that, like, hey she brought all her friends to, because, like, she's 14. She doesn't know any of that stuff. And this is one of the parts where I'm like, this is part of this thing where with the FBI regarding the sweetheart deal, that's intimidation from, you know, the FBI, or some rogue parts of the FBI. Dude, so then there was this woman, Sarah Kellen. She was known as Epstein's lieutenant, like, figuratively. And she was, there was, like, her and, like, 3 other women, Adriana Ross, Leslie Groff, and Nadia Marcinkova, all got off. They were listed as co-conspirators, like, basically like mini Ghislaines underneath. We talked about Epstein and his, basically these are the people that would take, like nude photography, or they would set up appointments. They would run the places where he would get all the massages. It's heavy stuff, man. But there was 4 women that were underneath Ghislaine that did the exact same thing that got off. And even this woman, Sarah Kellen, like, a lot of these women we just listed, like, said, hey, this woman, Sarah Kellen, is very much, like, part of the logistics department of all this stuff, if there even was such a thing. And, you know, but this woman, you know, Sarah Kellen's like, oh, I met him at 18. I'm a victim as well. This woman's an interior designer today, married a NASCAR driver. It's just insane. And, you know, Sarah Ranscom in that same interview talks about how, like, bringing up all these things is like being reaped by the system.
Yeah, it's a thing, I think, why a lot of times people who are sexually assaulted don't want to go to trial, just because you have the private kind of humiliation, and then you have to go out in public, and there are witnesses, and there are going to be people who are trying to intimidate you, and there are going to be people who are lying about you and saying the stuff Dershowitz was saying about how you're a prostitute, and it's your fault, all the victim blaming. Right. And it's like,
kidding me?
So it's sad to think how many other victims we probably just will never hear from, because they've already been so broken by Epstein that they just can't put that kind of public pressure on themselves. But that just goes to show how brave a lot of these other women are. Virginia Guffrey, Courtney Wild.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And so, you know, going back to the Epstein timeline, November 2018, investigative reports by the Miami Herald highlighted the lenient 2008 plea deal and the involvement of the then Labor Secretary Alex Acosta. You know, and he's the one who's, like, you know, he ordered the sweetheart deal, you know. On July 6, 2019, Epstein was arrested in New York on the federal sex trafficking charges, and Acosta resigned after that. You know, with Alex Acosta, you know, he was the Secretary of Labor under Trump. Like, he was an attorney out of Florida. Like, in Surviving Jeffrey Epstein on Prime, like they mentioned how, like, Acosta's job as Secretary of Labor is to cover and to monitor, like, acts of human trafficking in America.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a blatant disregard of power and or abuse of power on his side, you know. And I think what's important to bring up is that, you know, it's known that, like, he was the guy that said Epstein belonged to intelligence and to back off. And then he later rescinded his statements, and this has been part of the whole narrative of, hey, Epstein was intelligence? What are we talking about, you know? You know, his reason why he would have said that, which he, like, doesn't agree with, like, what, or if he retracted his statements, like, he, like, tried to reiterate them in a different way. It was all BS, but in my humble opinion, he essentially communicated that it was the best option, that it would be like, hey, if we can get him, it might be an all or nothing trial on this one, so let's just try to get him on something. And it's like, maybe Alex Acosta understood the corruption of the system at that point. I mean, it's been corrupt for a long time.
Yeah.
But, you know, once again, there is a difference between, like, being a rapist and being just, like, a sexual pervert. Like, but one's not a crime. Well, people would disagree about some things. And that's found out right here. Dan. We'll get to this last part of Epstein's death, and we'll wrap up part 1. But you know, Alex Acosta, he never reviewed any of the victim statements. So here's an interview.